Good morning, everybody, and thank you once again for tuning into the African Reform Movement channel, where we discuss everything African reform with an emphasis on Ghana. My name is Uche, and as always, we're going to be speaking with the esteemed Dr. Nii about today's topic. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. Just to let you know that Dr. Nii has a number of social media platforms which you can contact him on. I'd advise you to check out his sankofaafrica.com website, where he writes extensively on a number of topics in an article form. And then you can contact him on his social media platforms should you wish further input on those things. Dr. Nii's also written a number of books, all of which can be purchased at his Book Nook store. That's the information you can see at the bottom of your screen there. Okay, I will ask, once we start going into the conversation, you start thinking of questions to ask Dr. Nii, because this is an interactive platform, so please don't feel shy. Ask your questions. Ask your questions. So today we have a very interesting topic. So it's called, today's topic is the Nkrumah legacy and Ghana at 65. Nothing but the truth. And Dr. Nii knows the most amount about this topic. I believe that for many of us, we're going to be learning things for the first time. Just listen with an open mind, hear what you have to say, and then pose your questions. Okay? Dr. Nii, when you're ready, over to you.
Thank you very much, Uche, and to the audience. Thank you very much for making up time to be with me this morning in Ghana. It's 10 o'clock here. Oh, what's the time? Yeah, it's 10 o'clock here in Australia, Eastern Standard Time. Today is the Nkrumah legacy, Ghana at 65, nothing but the truth. 65 years ago today, Ghana was the most important place on planet Earth. Sub-Saharan Africa was going to get its first independent state from the United Kingdom. Everybody that was important then was in Ghana as we speak. And regardless of what I'm going to say, I'd like to pay a 10 seconds silence for the heroes of this day. The number one is Kwame Nkrumah. Number two is Komla Gbedema. Number three is Simon Dumbo. And number four is Bafakoto. Now, Gbedema was the deputy of Kwame Nkrumah. And for those of you who do not know, when Nkrumah was in prison in January 1950, after the positive action, Gbedema took over the party of CPP, and he actually led CPP to his first victory in general elections in 1951 February. Of the contested seats, which were 38, Gbedema led CPP to win 34. 2 went to UGCC, and 2 went to independence. So Gbedema played a major role. In actual fact, after that massive win, the governor was compelled to release Nkrumah from prison. Gbedema was going to stand in Accra Center, which was then known as Ashedu Keteke, but he left the place for Nkrumah, and that's what loyal deputies do, and that's what he did for Kwame Nkrumah. Now, the other one, Simon Dumbo, he formed an opposition party, Northern People's Party, in the northern part of Ghana. And I call him because he was able to snatch the North from Kwame Nkrumah in 1954. And the fourth person that I mentioned is Bafakoto. He was actually the chief linguist of the Asantehene Prempeh II. Now, he formed the National Liberation Movement, and he also was able to snatch Ashanti from Kwame Nkrumah in 1956. So these are the people who won elections towards our independence. May they all rest in peace wherever they are. Now, we're talking about Kwame Nkrumah, the legacy. The most important thing is that we must always be able to speak the truth. And speaking the truth means that you step on some toes. But when it comes to Ghana moving forward, we cannot afford not to speak the truth. Like they say, truth exalts a nation. And like the Apostle Paul said in Romans 15:4, the things which were written before, they were written for our admonishment, so that through learning them and enduring, we may have hope. Romans 15:4. It's very important that we learn for what has happened. For me, that's where I take my lessons from. Not to castigate somebody in particular, but to see that could he have done things differently? How, whatever I did at that time, how has that impacted our political culture and our governance today? And that's where we are going to start from. But people make a lot of noise. We'll just try and go through coolly and slowly so that we establish the facts. I must say also that I'm actually on call. So if you hear my phone ring, don't panic. I'll talk to them and I'll go to the hospital if necessary after the program. All right, so we are in 2022. And one thing which has happened in the last 5 years at least is the abysmal performance of Nana Akufo-Addo. It's so bad that now everybody talks about Nkrumah's Ghana, Nkrumah's Ghana, Nkrumah's Ghana, or Nkrumah is this, Nkrumah is that, because Nana Akufo-Addo is so bad that everybody is now better. Even John Mahama feels that he's resurrected. But how has this Ghana we are now being informed and influenced by Nkrumah's style of governance and by his personality? Let's first start from the basics. Can you please have slide 1? Okay. The Nkrumah legacy. We have to be very clear. We have to be very clear that when you are going to have a race and somebody is giving a start, it's not the same as somebody starting from the blocks. Okay, if you are giving 10-meter start for a 100 meters race, it's not the same as somebody starting from the blocks at 0 meters. And I believe that of all our leaders, Nkrumah was the only one who was giving a start. Why am I saying that? At the time he came to power fully in Southern Ghana in 1957, we had 200 million pounds, okay, in our reserves. According to Scott Thompson in the book he wrote, Ghana's Foreign Policy, 1957 to 1996, that amount of money was more than the reserves of India, with 300 million people at independence. We were only 5 million at independence, and we had 200 million pounds at that time. Now, 200 million pounds at that time of 5 million people, that 200 million pounds in today's world is going to be 5 billion pounds. But you have to understand that it was for 5 million people. And at the time Nkrumah was overthrown, he had accumulated a debt of 600 million pounds. So when you put the two together, he had 800 million pounds in his hands as reserves and as debt. I have not added cocoa money in this period. I have not added gold money. I have not added timber. I have not added any other money. I have not added taxes we paid. I have just added the reserves and the debt, 800 million. Now, for average population of 6 million, between 1957 and 66, our population averaged 6 million. About 5 million at the beginning and about 6.6 or 6.7 at the end, average 6 million. Okay. Now, 800 million pounds in those days is equal to 19.6 billion today. 19.6 billion today. But you have to understand that we are talking of an average of 6 million people. Today, we are 30.8. So that money per capita is about 100.6 billion pounds today. 100.6 billion pounds available to Ghana today is equal to the 800 million pounds available to Nkrumah at the end of his term. So now, if Ghana should be gifted 100.6 billion now, that will pay all our debt, and we have more to do a lot of things. So now, when people are talking about what Nkrumah did or what he didn't do, we have to understand that at that time, population and the value of the pound at that time, this is how much it's worth. Now, the question is this: if you are giving 100 billion pounds now, and you're asked to work or do something for Ghana, you realize that you do maybe 10 times more what Nkrumah did. We can never compare a population that is less than that of Greater Accra today to a population of 31 million today. And that's why it's going to be very difficult to compare what Nkrumah did when he took up infrastructure, whatever, what he did, and what others did after him. You can compare. Others, he came to meet 20 million pounds, which would be 5 billion pounds today in the kitty, and others came to meet debt. 600 million pounds then is 14.4 billion pounds today. And that's how post-Nkrumah Ghana started, a debt of 14.4 billion pounds. All right, next slide. The parameters. How are we going to work this guy out? How are we going to assess him? And I've put 5 points here: political, economics, foreign policy, equality of opportunities, and education, which mnemonic is PFE. You all understand PFE in Ghana, right? When you say PFE, all right, so the mnemonic for the parameter is PFE, P-E-F-E-E. All right, next slide. Political. I was in a program, I think on Wednesday, with two other guys, talking about something similar. And I said that in the 1956 elections, which brought Nkrumah to power as Prime Minister of Ghana at independence, the CPP got 57% of the votes, of the popular votes. Now, at that point in time, the parliament was 104 members of parliament. But then, Kwame Nkrumah got 71 seats in the 104 chamber. Now, one of the panelists said, no, what I'm saying is not correct, because if the person got 71 seats, how could they have gotten 57%? As if I created the numbers. The person doesn't know that Ghana Parliament at that time and even today was not, and it's not proportional representation. If it was proportional representation, then Nkrumah was going to have 57% of the seats in Parliament. We all know that the constituencies have different populations. You can win in heavily populated area, but it's just one seat. And somebody can win somebody can get the same number of seats, number of votes in the light populated area, that may win the person 3 seats. So the percentage a party gets is not the same as the number of seats the party will get. It could be whether, in 1969, Buzia Progress Party got 58% of the votes, but in Parliament they got 75% of the seats. They got 105 seats out of 140, which is 75%. The number of the votes a party gets in elections, the votes do not necessarily reflect the number of, because they are two different things. As a matter of fact, in 1979, Hilary Man got 35% of the votes in the first ballot, but out of the 140 seats in Parliament, he got 71, he got more than 50%, although he got 35% for the party. So I want to correct that one first. Now I'm looking at the political dimension of Nkrumah's rule. Regionalism to one-party state. Before Parliament, before independence, there was a stalemate between Nkrumah CPP and Baffa Koto's NLF. Baffa Koto wanted a federal system. Nkrumah wanted a unity system. So what happened? Nkrumah had to ask the Queen to send one of the Queen's best constitutional experts called Sir Frederick Byrne. Frederick Byrne was the architect of separating Pakistan from India and writing the constitution, or helping us write the constitutions there. So he was brought to Ghana in 1955 to come and help Ghana navigate through this stalemate. At the end of his 3 or 5 week stay, going through every part of Ghana, he came with what we call regionalism, that we should have a central government and 5 regional governments. At that point, then we had 5 provinces: Western, Eastern, Transwater Togoland, Ashanti, and the Northern Territory. And what he said was that the president of each regional of chiefs will be the head of the regional assembly, except in Ashanti, where the Santini will be the head of the regional assembly. And then the regional assembly, like the regional parliament, will have certain duties, will have certain functions of the of national government will be delegated to these regional assemblies. As a matter of fact, when he made those proposals and recommendations, and to actually inserted into the constitution, independence constitution, Nkrumah agreed. Unfortunately, the opposition did not agree. They did not agree. In fact, they even refused to meet Sir Alan Byrne. Although what Alan Byrne brought up was more in their favor than Nkrumah, the regionalism secured a place for the Asantini as the head of the regional assembly of Ashanti region, which was a key demand when they were talking about federalism. But somehow they refused to agree. They refused to accept it. Nkrumah accepted it, but he had his own mind because he didn't want that to become a block. He didn't want to become an issue. So I said without actually wanting it. And it was an entrenched provision in the constitution which says that for that to be repealed, you need to have 2/3 majority in parliament. And unfortunately, Nkrumah got 68% of the seats in parliament, so he had a 2/3. Not long after independence, Nkrumah repealed the law. He repealed the regional assemblies thing, and that's when we began to move on the road to the one-party state. Now, when we're talking of the legacy, the political legacy, what does that mean? For me, what it means is that how has Nkrumah's governance influenced our governance today? What is his legacy politically? And I can tell you 2 things. I can tell you that Nkrumah trashed the rule of law. Nkrumah trashed the rule of law. He was the one who actually sacked his Chief Justice because the Chief Justice sat on the panel and the panel freed people that he thought had wanted to kill him. And these people were his own ministers. His number 2, technically, Tayo Adamafio, who was the Minister for Broadcasting and Information and Presidential Affairs. And the second person was Mr. Akwaje, his own foreign minister, the guy who actually recommended from Nkrumah to be brought from England to come and help with the independence agitation. And the third person was Kofi Krab, who was the executive secretary of the CPP. They were found not to be guilty in the attempt to kill him in Kulungungu, but he wasn't happy with that decision. So he sacked the Chief Justice and created a new panel of judges, and they sentenced his closest friends to life in prison for treason. He interfered with the judiciary, and like I always said, the wealth of nations is hidden in the rule of law. When you disturb the rule of law, you are disturbing the wealth of your people. Now, how has this influenced subsequent people? How has it influenced them? Busia came, and when the Supreme Court ruled against him, in the case, the Republic versus Salah, he said no court could tell him what to do. And he refused to abide by the Supreme Court decision. When Kufuor came, and Kufuor also lost a case against Achuchi Kata, what did Kufuor do? He went ahead, packed the Supreme Court with new judges, and he won the case on review. What did John Mahama do? When some journalists threatened to rape the Chief Justice and other people in the Supreme Court, and they were sentenced to some terms of prison, John Mahama went ahead and pardoned them because we have got this thing down that the president can do whatever he likes with the judiciary. The president can do whatever he likes with the judiciary. Now, how has Nkrumah governed? How has it affected our general governance? And there we come to the 1992 Constitution. Anybody who understood or who understands the 1964 one-party constitution will understand that the 1992 Constitution is a light version of the 1964 one-party state constitution. Because what this constitution does is to put a slight spin on all the powers that Nkrumah had under the one-party state constitution. They say they did that because of Rawlings. He needed to get ready to accept democracy. So they had to write a constitution that he would accept. But that is not actually the case. They had the 1964 constitution on hand, and they look at it that, look, this is the way to go if you want a dictator to be comfortable with democracy. So Nkrumah set the standard, the gold standard. Today, whereas Nkrumah could sack the Supreme Court, consider the whole Supreme Court again. Today, you cannot do that, but there is no upper limit. The number of people, the number of judges you can have the Supreme Court. So you can decide to have 20. As of now, I think we have 18. Then Akufo-Addo alone appointed 8 of them. If he loses the case, and he thinks that he doesn't have to start the teachers anymore. If he thinks that he needs to appoint 3 more and get a review of the case, he can do that because there's no upper limit. In a way, it's a more civilized way of the 1964 one-party rule, but the effect is the same. The president can win any case he thinks is important for him to win because he can manipulate the judiciary. When you look at the parliament, again, there is no upper limit of members of parliament. People who don't know, in 1957, when we became independent, we had 104 members of parliament. In 1965, after the one-party state has been declared or established, Nkrumah almost doubled the 104 to 198. And what happened? He appointed all of them. He appointed all of them. Now, after appointing all of them as MPs, then they also lifted up their hands to vote for him as president. So the Nkrumah that was overthrown was not a president voted for by Ghanaians. And the parliament that was overthrown was not a parliament voted for by Ghanaians. Today, the president doesn't have to increase the number of parliamentarians. He will just go to the EC. So they say, between 2003 and 2011, 8 years, Ghana increased its members of parliament by 75. Now, for those who care to know, the total number of MPs in the Australian lower house is 150. It's been like that forever. But in Ghana, within 8 years, Ghana increased its members of parliament by 75, which is 50% of the total number of MPs in Australia, because that's the legacy, the impunity, that we can do whatever we like. The impunity, that we can do whatever we like. Now, when we talk about legacy, we have to know what people refer to when they say legacy. Legacy is what you did, not what you thought. Okay, so not to tell you whatever intentions of him, good or bad or whatever, we are talking about what he did. He became the state. He appointed parliament, he appointed the judiciary. The 2 arms of government that were supposed to be independent, he had control over both of them. And today, as we are talking, the president also has absolute control over the judiciary. Unfortunately, this particular parliament, he didn't win the budget that he had wanted, so his control is a bit split. But technically, he also has that control over the parliament. That is a political legacy. That is a political. I mean, people always forget this. Ghanaians voted for Nkrumah to become their prime minister. So Ghanaians employed him. He was an employee of the people. He wasn't their founder. They voted for him. Now, but when he came to power, the coin, or one of our currencies, I think a coin or something, had this picture on it with the words written in Latin, the founder of the state of Ghana. So the employee became the owner of the country. And that culture has permeated up to today. Nana Akufo-Addo was begging everybody, please try me, please try me. Oh, please try me too. He was begging. Then when he became president, he became the owner. He could do whatever he liked. Because that's the legacy. People believe that if you are president, then the country belongs to you. The Mamba did the same thing. They will say that Yenti Obia means that we're not listening to anybody. How can you say that in a democracy if you didn't believe that the place belongs to you? So when you're talking about legacy, we have to know what you're talking about. I'm not saying that Nkrumah asked them to do it, but that's the culture he created. Today, we are still debating who funded Ghana. How stupid can that be? How stupid can that be? What was Nkrumah born? What was David Nauka born? Were they not born in this country? So how could he be a founder of the country that they were born into? But that is the narrative we have created for ourselves. And that's the legacy. That's the political legacy you're talking about. Next slide, please. Economics. People make a lot of noise about this. Okay. In the beginning, I just told you that the money that Nkrumah made in our reserves and the debt that he accumulated, total of 800 million, in today's Ghana is going to be, in today, that figure is 19.6 billion for 6 million people. For 6 million people. If you transpose that to almost 31 million people, it's over 100 billion. So what did they get from the 100 billion? What did they get from the 100 billion? When we are talking, people talk as if, yes, Nkrumah built Tema Harbour. Were you expecting other people to come and build harbour? How many harbours do we need in Ghana? That's the job of the first president. But before then, Gordonsberg had built harbour in Takoradi already. And he built it without borrowing a cent from anywhere. He built Takoradi Harbour, I think, in 1925 or 1926. He built it without taking a cent from anywhere. So why must Ghana build a second harbour by borrowing? If we could make good use of the money in our reserves and our continuous cocoa sales and our continuous gold sales and our continuous timber sales and all the efforts we're making. And that's the point. Value for money. Value for money. You see, you cannot say that Nkrumah built harbour. Who else built harbour? We're not supposed to have 3 harbours. Probably we're not even supposed to have 2 harbours. I don't know. But obviously, when the first prime minister or first president builds a harbour, he built it for the whole country. You don't have to build harbour again unless there's a specific need for that. Okay. Nkrumah built Akosombo Dam. Now, the Akosombo Dam itself costs 160 billion pounds. Okay. What I'm saying is this. That 160 billion pounds, Ghana could have built that Akosombo Dam from its own reserves. Our reserves was 200 million pounds. And we didn't have to go and beg Kaiser for money and give us stringent conditions for helping us. But at the time we were going to build the dam, the money was gone. In 1985, when Ghana was going to host the OAU conference, Nkrumah called the deputy governor of Bank of Ghana, Frimpong Ansah, that the government wanted 10 million pounds from the reserves. And Frimpong Ansah, it was in a cabinet meeting. Frimpong Ansah told him that, say, our reserves, we have only 500,000 pounds in our reserves. The 200 million pounds had shrunken to 500,000. And according to him, Nkrumah cried. Because he didn't know that the money had gone. You see, and this is the problem. Nkrumah had never seen money before until he became the prime minister. The man has not actually worked full-time anywhere before. So he felt that that money there would never get finished. So he was just throwing it around, like a drunken sailor, throwing the money around. When he wanted the money, 10 million pounds for the OAU conference in 1965, he was told, say, we are broke, like we are broke today. We have only $500,000 in the kitty. And he cried. I described that as post-poverty syndrome. You know what happens to these taxi drivers and those guys who win big lotteries? They become poorer than before they win the lotteries. Because when they see the money, they never think that it will get finished. And they will spend left, right, center, whereas it's all finished and they are owing. They become worse than before they even won the lottery. And that's what actually went through. We can talk about agric and industry. People talk about factories and farms. Factories and farms. Before you start any business, you have to decide where the market is, where you're going to sell, because we all know from basic economics that production ends with consumption. You are not going to start any business where you don't know where the consumption will go. You just create jobs for people. In the end, you pay people more than what they produce. And that's what happened, that when he established factories, every single year from 1963, 64, 65 until it was overthrown, the factories recorded losses. Massive losses. The first year, it got 23 million pounds loss. Those who actually can go and read Nkrumah, Vision and Tragedy by David Rooney. The book is in the University of Ghana bookshop. It was forwarded by Akila Akpasoya, a profound Nkrumahist. In the first year, 1963, they lost to the state for these factories, which are all randomly done for political reasons, cost us 23 million pounds. More than 10% of our reserves, total reserves at independence, 23 million pounds. And subsequently, every year, because what are you producing? Who is going to buy them? Producing corned beef for which market? The Ghanaian is happy to eat his Kobe and his fish than corned beef. So you make a corned beef factory, think that, oh, we need a high this, we need a, who's going to buy them? And post Nkrumah, it's been shown all over the world that state farms and state-owned enterprises do not work. People talk as if we need a state farm now today to give job to people. Where in the world do you have that? Where in the world do you have that? It was bad investment. And it happened after Nkrumah went to the Soviet Union and saw the cooperative farms there. But Soviet Union is not from Ghana. In Ghana, before Nkrumah came to power, we had cocoa farmers, peasant cocoa farmers, with their raw hands producing 50% of world cocoa. No country has ever produced any 50% of any agricultural products. But Ghanaian farmers were doing that. So we were good farmers. Our farmers did not need competition from the state. But it was wrong policy, and money went down the drain because of that. And that is why $19.6 billion, 19.6 billion pound equivalent at that time couldn't do much. Everything in terms of economics, in terms of agriculture, in terms of industry, everything Nkrumah did with all the good intentions lacked value for money. In the end, we became debtors. Old. And we haven't come out from that hole today. Next slide, please. Foreign affairs, the mother of all disasters. Ironically, some see as its best phase. Look, we can talk about this forever, but fundamentally, Nkrumah devoted a lot of Ghana's money into foreign affairs. Yes, he was able to inspire others, especially African Americans, black and proud, and all those things. But you see, Ghana, with a monocrop economy, cocoa, is not or was not suited for that kind of operation. At that point in time, we didn't have less than 20% of Ghanaians had clean drinking water. And Ghana voted for him to face Ghana's problem first. He went around talking about African unity. How are we going to do African unity? And what they use for the African unity? It wasn't necessary then, it's not necessary now. Because African unity is not going to stop Akufo-Addo from doing what he's doing. What Africa needs is a new consciousness. You are not going to create African unity because few years of state meet and decide that we are united. No, unity starts from the people. And at that point in time, and even today, it's a no. And that's the disaster. But the irony of all is this. This was Kwame Nkrumah, who was talking about African unity. But at the same time, he went to South Africa and divided the front, ANC front. He created the Pan-African Congress because he didn't like ANC's Freedom Charter, which said it's going to be a non-racial country. He felt that ANC was a sellout, so to speak, and he wanted Pan-Africanism. So he created a lot of Ghana government money, went to create the Pan-African Congress for Robert Sobukwe, who was then a member of the ANC. They broke away. Now, I got this file directly from one of the founding members of the PS. It was called John Kwananzi. When I went to South Africa, he was the PS leader for KwaZulu-Natal. We met at a party. When he heard I was a Ghanaian, we became friends immediately. So he started telling me about this, the money they got, what happened when the Shabu massacre happened. Nkrumah chartered a plane to Botswana, and everybody who got in there was from out of South Africa. He started all the stuff, but all this was money from our reserves, from our poor cocoa farmers, most of whom did not have clean drinking water. Most of them did not have electricity in their homes. So for me, it was a disaster. Those who are interested can read Ghana's Foreign Policy, 1957 and 1966, by Scott Thompson. I have a soft copy. Those who want to read what actually happened, I can send it to you so that you read for yourself, so that you understand where your money went to and why we became debtors, why we ended up with a debt of £600 million after just 9 years of independence. Next topic, please. Next slide, sorry. Equality. Now, this place I said double-edged sword, but let me focus on this one area that Nkrumah, in my personal opinion, did very well. Equality of opportunity. And I'm saying that from personal experience, that unlike Dankwa, who was an account supremacist, Nkrumah was not a tribal supremacist. That much I'll give it to him. In all fairness, as much as he lied with him, he gave equal opportunity to anybody who came in his way and who supported his party. You have to support the party anyway, because he never saw anything outside the CPP. But the truth of the matter is this, Shike's father, Kofi Awuno, at the age of 27, Nkrumah sent him to China to go and study espionage, so that when he came back, he would head the intelligence system that he wanted to establish. So a 27-year-old boy there, he was there for a year, and he came back. And at the age of 28, he made him the managing director of Ghana Film, because Ghana Film was going to be the cover for the intelligence network. Unfortunately, 3 years before everything would be properly established, Nkrumah was overthrown. And that forced Kofi Awuno into exile. Now, Kofi Awuno, in spite of all Nkrumah's mistakes, which we discussed extensively, he was still loyal to, because he said that it's only Nkrumah would have given an ever like him that opportunity at that point in time, which I agree. We all know the history of Ghana. He said, no, he would never have had that, although he was the best qualified person. His tribe would have disqualified him if Nkrumah's opponents were in power. And that is true. Because when they came to power in 1969, they did not only stop people, they didn't make one single ever a minister. And not only that, they chased every single ever in the senior position, Apollo 568, from the civil service. And that's why Salah, a manager at GNTC, took Buzia to court. Buzia lost in the Supreme Court, and Buzia said nobody can tell him what to do. So Kofi Awuno was right. And Nkrumah wasn't like that. Nkrumah didn't chase people because of ethnicity. He chased people because they were opposed to his party, but never ethnicity. So in that regard, he did very well. I mean, in that regard, probably only who else would have done that? Acheampong and Rawlings. Ironically, only the two military guys would have done that. Acheampong, when you look at his commissioners at that time, no, there was no hint that Acheampong was an Ashanti. There was no hint. Everybody was represented. And when you look at Rawlings' cabinet, both from PNDC to NDC 1, NDC 2, you will never know that this man was an ever. Like I said before, in NDC 2, there were only two ever cabinet ministers, Victor Beho and Obed Asamoah. Yes, only two. So it's very clear that these people, the rest, forget about them. Forget about them. So, and that is one of the key areas in our preamble, that equality of opportunity. And that one I was called Nkrumah hide there. All right. Next topic. Next slide, please. Education. Okay. The people make a lot of noise about education. But for me, I was called Nkrumah though. You see, we can talk about primary education, secondary education, tertiary education. Primary education, Nkrumah started well with it started well with the experimental school system in 1952, where people like Chachi Cheketa, Foy Cheketa, Nano Konedu, and the rest, they all went to experimental schools, and they ended up going to Achimota and Farm Spring big schools because they were able to compete preparatory school students. And the plan was that this would become a nationwide thing after 6 years. From 1952 to Nkrumah was overthrown in 1966, the experimental schools remained experimental. Not a single one was built. There are a few in Accra, one in Osu, one in Accra, Newtown. I don't know where else you find them in Accra, but there are a few scattered as pilot project. He was never able to expand it to become the national standard. And the reason was because of secondary education. When Nkrumah came to power, there were two types of secondary schools. Let me say, for instance, in Accra, we have Accra Academy, which is a local community, which is a community day school in Jamestown, started by local guys. We have Accra High, started by one Sierra Leonean in Accra. And then we have Achimota School, built by Godgisbeck. Okay, Achimota was boarding. These two other schools were community day schools. And it was up to Nkrumah to choose which model he wanted to use. Unfortunately, he decided to go the Achimota way. And in the country, where at that point in time, GDP per capita was $183. I mean, $183. There was no way our total GDP at that point in time was $1.22 billion. There was no way a country where GDP per capita of $183 can sustain boarding school system. It's impossible. If you throw the whole amount of, if you throw our whole budget, 100% of budget into education, you cannot build enough boarding schools for a population of 5 million people. It's impossible. And the best way it should have gone was to adopt the Accra Academy system, so that you will build also Academy, La Academy, Tertiary Academy, Nkrumah Academy, Tema Academy, Bom Academy, Prampram Academy, Nkrumah Academy, Adan Academy, Akosombo Academy, whatever. You keep building. That, as we know then, or as we know it to be in Australia, in UK, in US, everywhere. You build, but when you build one big school like Labone, the annual, you build a big school there, which is probably hosting 600, 800 students. Their water bill alone could build a day school every year. But government had to pay for all this. It was unsustainable. And as history would have revealed, or as fact would have revealed to us now, today it is all students who are maintaining this school, but there was no way. And unfortunately, that's the bad legacy. No government has been bold enough to move from this boarding school system. When Akubado came, the free boarding SHS, I knew it was going to fail. Because it's impossible and it is not necessary. In Australia here, my children went to day schools. If you want to go to a boarding school, probably less than 1% of all Australians go to boarding school, you pay about $40,000 a year for one student. And it is not necessary because whether you go to day or you go to boarding, the results are the same. And that's what should have happened. It was a wrong policy, which we are still struggling to cope with now. Because now, anybody who comes and says that I'm going to solve this is going to have a fight on his hands. But that's what you have to do. It's impossible. And because of the massive money that went into secondary education, we could not roll out the experimental school system because there was no more money. Like today, we are hearing that if people don't pay the e-levy, there will be no money for your free SHS. Because it was not sustainable in the first place. But here we are. So now, when we talk about the legacy, I'm looking at it from what is rulership or how Islam has affected the way we are ruled today. And the areas I mentioned about the constitution, that is a light version of the 1964 constitution that he drew for himself. In our education system, we are still stuck with a school which is split into three, or school is a primary school which is split into three systems. Poor government school, good government school like the experimental school, the army schools, the university primaries, and preparatory private schools. If Nkrumah had followed up his plan and they had rolled out the experimental schools, there would have been no need for a lot of things that are going to. But today, we still have students who are still studying under trees because all the money is still going to big boarding schools that should not be there at government expense. Because of the money going to the free SHS as we speak today, there isn't enough money to build classrooms for people in faraway places and to have good classrooms to study in. They're still studying under trees. When are we going to change? So when we're talking about the legacy, these are some of the legacies. I mean, people talk about, like I said, people talk about farming and factories. No country is sustained on that as we speak today because that's not the way to go. That's not good economics. Oh, where are the factories? The factories were running at a loss when Nkrumah was overthrown anyway. Where are the farms? The farms were running at a loss when it was overthrown anyway. Because that's not the way it works. And it was advised several times by people who knew better, but he refused. He believed that he needed to keep the political momentum. That's what he used to tell Atta Lewis. He said, Mr. Prime Minister, you have to govern now. There's no elections there. No, we've got to keep the political momentum. So he made these huge mistakes. And today, as we sit here, we must go to be sincere and take stock and decide that, look, these policies were not right then and cannot be right today. But when we defend the indefensible, we keep repeating the same mistakes. And that's what's happening with the secondary school system. Now, again, because of the massive money went into secondary education, which he tried a little, he built Cape Coast University, he built Tech, but again, he could have done more if he had gone the Accra Academy and Accra High community school system instead of the big, grandiose secondary schools that he built. Because you know what? From 1951, that Nkrumah CP took charge of the education portfolio. At that time, there were 743 places in serving from one. By the time he left government in 1966, there were only 10,166. So Nkrumah actually created less than 9,300 new places in secondary from one. Now, when Achiampong took over in 1972, we had 13,059 places. 13,059 places. By the time I went to Form 179, the SMC was overthrown, there were more than 32,000 places. So Achiampong created over 19,000. Achiampong created over 19,000 secondary school places, Form 1 places, enrollment in 6 years, and Nkrumah created 9,000 in 15 years. Nkrumah came to meet 200 million pounds. Achiampong came to meet debt. In fact, debt he said he won't pay. We call it in Twi, and because he said he won't pay that debt, it was cancelled. Nobody loaned money to Ghana. So Achiampong did all this without a single loan from anywhere. And that's what they call internal mobilization, one of his 7 principles. We mobilized money internally. And he was able to do more than double in 6 years what Nkrumah did in 15 years. So now, the legacy. The legacy is that our education system has failed to move away from what Nkrumah established, the boarding school system, as a default. We need a new plan. Legacy, politically, we have failed to survive as a nation because we are still in the de facto one-party state. We conduct multi-party elections, the party that wins becomes a one-party government. A one-party government in the unity state is a de facto one-party state. And that's where we are. Once you win the elections, you control everything. You appoint everybody. You appoint district executives, you appoint district chief executive, municipal executive, whatever, ministers, even regions that you lose, you still appoint. Even districts that you lose, you still appoint, because that's the legacy. That's the culture that was created. When Nkrumah could put his son into a coffers and take 10 million pounds and give it to Guinea, that 10 million pounds in today's world, in today's money, is 245 million pounds. If today a country will give us 100 million pounds, we'll be worshipping the country. But we get the equivalent of 245 million pounds to Guinea. And that's how our presidents feel today. He can decide to hire a plane, $14,000, $15,000 an hour, and fly around because he believes the country is his. The impunity. Because, like we say in Ghana, you follow the path of old. And that's what so we need a change. We need a radical change. 1, our political culture must change. 2, our political structure must change. 3, our education system must change. 4, our economic policy must change. All these things are what you find in my manifesto, Weep Not Africa. We need a new game plan. And as we celebrate 65 years of independence, we must reflect sincerely and genuinely what we can do for our country.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Nii. Much appreciated. Oh, let me just get this back. Cool. Okay, thank you for that. Interesting. We don't actually have any questions yet. I'm just wondering if there's something wrong, but we don't have any questions yet. But whilst we're waiting for those to come in, just you mentioned that did you say that Ghana produced 50% of the world's cocoa at one time? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And how much does it produce now?
25%.
Okay, so what made the difference? How's it gone down?
Well, at the moment, Ivory Coast is producing about 35%. Let me put it this way. The cocoa industry basically collapsed. Now, that's a long story. But that's a long story. But the bottom line is this. Before 1954 elections, okay, Nkrumah and Gbedema promised the cocoa farmers that they were going to float the price of cocoa on the world market. At that point in time, the price of cocoa was pegged at 30% on the world market. So if the world market price was $100, they were paying Ghana farmers $30. But then he told them that they were going to float the money, they're going to float the cocoa, and that means that the price on the world market is what they will get in Ghana, or something close to that. But after, and then this is what happened. At that point in time, there were 21 constituencies in Ashanti, and Nkrumah CPP won 18 of the 21 because he made this big promise. So he won Ashanti hands down, 18 out of 21. A month after he won the elections, Gbedema went to Parliament and said, well, they've changed their mind about the cocoa policy, but they are not going to float the cocoa. And not only that, they're going to tax 10% on export tax. 10% export tax on cocoa. So they will fix the cocoa price as it was then, but again, they will charge 10% export tax. So you are bringing money to a government, but they will charge you for bringing money to a government, 10%. And that was the biggest political mistake Nkrumah made in his whole career, because that's what started. You see, people don't know. In 1954, the opposition, led by Buzia, Ghana Congress Party, won only 1 seat out of 104. When, after 1951 elections, the UGCC collapsed after Gbedema beat them to stupor. And what came in its place was Ghana Congress Party led by Buzia. So UGCC did not contest the 1954 election. It was Buzia who led the Ghana Congress Party to contest the 1954 elections. And they won only one seat. That was Buzia's own seat. And he won by only 18 votes. So there was no opposition in Ghana. Opposition was dead. But the moment Gbedema and Nkrumah lied to the farmers, and they changed their mind and said, no, we're not going to follow the cocoa price anymore. We're going to keep it the way it was at that point in time. And we're going to pay 10% tax as export tax. That changed everything in Ashanti. That's what brought the National Liberation Movement. So that's what actually Nkrumah and Gbedema caused their own downfall. And that's when this country divided. The Ashanti nationalism came up. To the National Liberation Movement in Ghana has not been the same again, because what happened was that the 1956 elections, for the first time, CPP lost in Ashanti. The National Liberation Movement, led by Bafa Koto, won 12 out of the 21 seats, and Nkrumah got, I think, 8, and one went to independent. That was the end. I've written a whole, no, I won't say about, it would be like a pamphlet, 5,000 words, the rise and fall of Nkrumah in Ashanti. Very interesting. Now, so when he brought this new thing, people started smuggling cocoa to Ivory Coast. If you know Ghana very well, the Ashanti borders Ivory Coast. Actually, you have a large number of Ashantis living in Ivory Coast as well. Ofwebuanyi was an Ashanti. Konambedi is an Ashanti. But they are in Ivory Coast, on the other side of the border. They started smuggling cocoa to Ivory Coast, and that's when the tide began to change. Eventually, Ivory Coast overtook us in the mid-70s, and we have not been able to recover.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So yeah, that's the cocoa politics, and that's why when Akufo-Addo brought this e-levy tax, I said, look, be careful, because it was a tax, that export tax that Nkrumah and Gbedema brought onto cocoa, that was the beginning of their end. Be careful about taxes. When taxes are unreasonable, they can end the government rule. When taxes are unreasonable, and we are in Ghana now struggling because the atmosphere there is very charged. Anything at all can happen in Ghana because of same tax. And Akufo-Addo, he is a beneficiary of the mistake Nkrumah made, because his party is the descendant of National Liberation Movement, which was formed because of this tax problem. So he should know their history. That, but for Nkrumah's tax on cocoa, there will be no opposition to him. He demolished the opposition completely.
Would you say that in today's world, shea butter could be the equivalent of cocoa?
Yes, I can say that if it's managed properly. Just a minute, please. I'm getting a call from the hospital.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on 1 second. So everybody, for those of you watching, could you please start sending your questions? Normally we have a few questions by now, or comments. There haven't been any, so please start sending them in. For example, did you learn anything new today about Kwame Nkrumah that Dr. Nii brought up? Was there anything you're unclear about, anything you're unsure about, anything you disagree with? Please feel free to send in your questions so that he can start answering them for you. Okay. Oh. Oh, what happened here? Oh.
Hello.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Yeah. I was just about to call you and say that you have to unmute yourself. Get your side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes. So you would say that in today's economy, shea butter is equivalent to what cocoa was. Yeah.
I mean, in today's, let me put it this way, that the cocoa industry
Mm-hmm.
was actually built by Gordon Gordonsberg. Unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
when we got independence, we all focused on the cocoa and we did not look at diversifying our agricultural exports because we should have taken on
Mm-hmm.
to shea butter to do to shea butter what Gordonsberg did to cocoa.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if we could do that, yes, it will have the same value as cocoa, or probably even more.
Okay. Probably more. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, Doctor, there's no questions. I'm not quite sure why. There's no questions. Oh wait. One's just coming now. So Ken says Nkrumah had his shortcomings as a human being, just like any one of us, but overall he shook the foundations of the imperial system. In my opinion, Nkrumah is the most influential vanguardist African leader. Do you agree or disagree, Dr. Nii?
Oh, I disagree.
Okay,
I
please tell us
disagree.
why.
Yeah, I disagree. You see, and this is part of the propaganda that Adamafio said he created Nkrumah to be. Nkrumah did not shake imperial system. He did not. At all. How did he do it? He did not. What happened was this. Nkrumah, just a minute, please. Just a minute.
Okay. If you mute yourself, then yeah.
Yeah, hello.
Okay. So for those of you who are just joining us, Dr. Nii did mention that he might be getting a phone call, so he sends his apologies ahead of time. But yeah, please do start thinking of other questions or comments you want to make with regards to the presentation Dr. Nii gave. Thank you for your question, Kenneth. Once he gets off the phone, he'll fully answer that for you.
The issue is not about, the issue is not about shortcomings. Everybody has shortcomings except Jesus Christ. Okay. The issue is not about shortcomings. The issue is about policy. Because if you have a good policy, it can be implemented wrongly. Now, let's come back to whether Nkrumah should the imperial system or not. He did not at all. Not in any way. This is what happened. When Nkrumah came to Ghana 47 December, in January 1948, Nkrumah Oswala Tamante staged boycott of European goods, which was supposed to end on the 28th of February 1948. On that same day, ex-servicemen led by Sergeant Ajete, Corporal Tipo, and Private Atelamte, they were going to the castle to present their petition to the British government because their demand or their promises have not been met for going to the war. Okay. The superintendent, President Emery, shot and killed them. And that threw Accra into pandemonium. The following day, the governor had to call for emergency rule in Ghana. Now, this is what actually propelled the independence movement. At that point in time, Nkrumah was a member of the UGCC. They had brought him from England to Ghana to help them organize as general secretary. Now, this is what happened. Somewhere down the line, by June 1949, there was a break apart. Nkrumah, Bedema, Botio, Dinkley, Dewi, and the rest, they move away to go and form CPP. That was June 1949. By January 1950, Nkrumah staged or led what they call positive action and was arrested. So, as a matter of fact, what happened was that when the state of emergency was declared, the colonial government decided that okay, they had to try and give independence to Ghana. So they set up a committee called Watson Committee. And the Watson Committee made recommendations as to the way forward. And the recommendation was accepted by the governor, who then considered what they call a Kosi Committee to look into the new constitution for Ghana. Okay. At that point in time, Ghana had got a Benz Constitution of 1946 already, which was the highest level of constitution even at that point in colonial Africa. Mind you, that was 1946. Because after the Second World War, Russia or Soviet Union and US both told UK and France that you cannot continue colonialism because they said colonialism was a cousin of Nazism. We cannot defeat Nazi Germany and you continue with colonizing. So there was pressure on UK and France to decolonize. So after the Second World War, the major foreign policy of UK was to decolonize. And that's why they started with Ghana with the Benz Constitution of 1946. People who want to read the Benz Constitution can go and read. They can just Google, find the Benz Constitution, and see that at that point in time, Ghana was already the highest in terms of leading to independence. Anyway, the boycott and the rout led to the formation of the Kusi Committee, which recommended the roadmap for independence with elections in 1951. So, as a matter of fact, the road to independence really had very little to do with Nkrumah. It had everything to the route, everything to do with the boycott by Kwabena and the killing of Sergeant Etta. He had every now those
so
things.
You did this. He said he did it by contributing to the international politics of global South.
No, you see, you know what? When we were in primary school, so we were taught that after Ghana independence in 1957, Nkrumah helped 16 African countries to gain independence in 1960, including Nigeria. But that was an absolute lie. The 14 African countries that gained independence in 1960, they were French colonies who had been guaranteed independence already by way back in 1946 by de Gaulle. It had nothing to do with Nkrumah. As a matter of fact, in 1953, Nigeria met in London to decide what constitution they wanted for themselves. And Nigeria became federal way back before Ghana independence. As a matter of fact, Nigeria had its own limited independence from 1952 to 1960. So the independence of Nigeria was not contingent upon that of Ghana. And the same applies to Somalia. What I'm saying is that when Nkrumah was talking big, was talking big, doing this and that all over the place, throwing our money all over the place. But what are the outcomes? He like I said in the foreign policy area, yes, he talked, he brought Dumbo to Ghana, he brought George Palmer to Ghana, he was talking with CLR James and all those guys, because he was a diasporan, so he knew them and he made all those things. But what were the outcomes? What were the results? What he did that hurt Africa, as a matter of fact, was splitting the front of ANC by creating PAC, Pan-Africanist Congress. That actually delayed the struggle in South Africa. So, yeah, he did a bit in terms of that outreach. But in all fairness, when it comes to the British, the colonial system was crumbling. The colonial system was unsustainable after the Second World War. And others took opportunity and, all these things happened and things like that happened. But really, 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 in terms of what somebody did to show results for, I don't know which one single African country I would say we didn't have gotten independence back from Nkrumah. Let me put it that way. I don't know one single African country that we didn't have gotten independence back from Nkrumah. One. I don't know one. So that's what I'm talking about. Giving money to people, to what's his name? Yamiogo of Upper Volta, to Bembela of Algeria, to what's the other guy? Secretary of Guinea and all those things. That's when like a drunken sailor. What were the benefits of those? And these are monies made by somebody else. Hard money made by cocoa farmers, which being beaten by snakes on the cocoa farms. So yeah, there's a lot of propaganda around this and that, this and that, this and that. I mean, somebody even told me that a 70-year-old man told me that, but for Nkrumah, Ghana will be smaller because there will be no voter raging. I said, pardon me, what are you talking about? He said, yes, it was Nkrumah who brought the Voltarians into Ghana. I said, this is the biggest lie for your age. Because if you don't know, in 1951, the Transvaal Togoland, they voted for Nkrumah. You see, people just confuse the facts. What happened for the plebiscite in the voter regime was not bringing them to Ghana. We had two parts of Ghana at that point in time. The one that was colonized by Britain, and the part that was given to Britain by the United Nations after the First World War, which was the Transvaal Togoland. Both were administered by Britain. Okay, so in 1951, when we started our march independence, the parliament had people who voted for Nkrumah in parliament because Britain was administering both of them. Now, the question is this. They did a plebiscite because Britain actually did not colonize them. That part was given to Britain by the United Nations. So the plebiscite was whether they wanted to maintain the status quo to remain part of the Ghana that had been part of since 1918, or they want to move away. It wasn't Nkrumah, it was UN who said, give the people the chance to decide whether they want to be part of Ghana or they to move away. They were already part of Ghana, whether to maintain the status quo or not. And the people voted to remain part of Ghana. So I asked him, how did Nkrumah do that? When he was in jail, these were voted in the 1954 elections. They voted in the 1954 elections. 1956, when they go to get independence, they had the choice to remain with Ghana or not to remain with Ghana. And they voted to remain with Ghana. How did Nkrumah do that? Why do you want to change the narrative? Why is that necessary? Then he said, I said, yes, but this is the simple truth. You can Google anywhere and find it there. He didn't bring them in. They were already in parliament. His own deputy, Bedema, was an Evan. They were already in parliament. They had to decide whether they want to remain, they wanted the status quo to remain, or they wanted to move out. And they said they wanted to remain. How did Nkrumah do that? The people chose to remain. And the people said Nkrumah brought them. Did he fight? Did he wage a war to bring them in? How did he do that? So the thing is this. What Nkrumah did, he did. What he did not do, he did not do. What he did well, he did well. What he did not do well, he did not do well. We cannot just mix the facts. But the key thing here is the legacy. How has his governance affected the governance we have now? And I'm saying that if people say the country must go, the country must go, they must know where the country came from. It's a light version of the First Republic Constitution. Now that you are complaining about education, this and that and that and that, there's the Albertus around neck, which is the boarding school system, was his legacy. Uche, you were born in the UK. Did you go to a boarding school in the UK?
No.
Yes. If you're in Ghana, you are going to a boarding school. I went to boarding school. Ken went to a boarding school in the same school. But Ken is in London, and the children are not in boarding school. So there's a problem. There's a policy problem. That's what I'm saying. And the legacy lives on. You see, the reason why we are struggling is that we are not allowed to talk about it. But if we don't talk about it, how do we correct it? So when we say that the legacy of Nkrumah, that's what I'm talking about. You see, what we are dealing here with is somebody who used the money he came to meet to popularize himself at the expense of proper development of his country. There's no value for money. I live in a country where you can travel on 4x4, 4 going, 4 coming from Melbourne to Sydney, 1,000 kilometers. And all we praise is a 19-kilometer motorway, 2 going, 2 coming. What's big about that? 19 kilometers. It's like a suburban road here. So for me, I go by agri. Agri says only the best is good for Africa, so I don't take any substandard. I know what is the best. So anybody who performs below the best is nobody to me, so far as I'm concerned. What I want is to have a country in Ghana where we can have high-speed train from Enugu on the border of Ivory Coast to Aflao, and to have high-speed train from Accra to Paga with the border of Burkina Faso, because the economy is based on two things: movement of people and movement of goods. That's why in the UK, where you are, Uche, and where Ken is, before they open a new estate, they call service band. Everything we put there, the road, the this and that, before they will put the houses on it, because that's what makes the place a place. Movement of people and movement of goods. So me, if I have that money, because what they used to construct 1,400 kilometers of railway in Australia, in Nkrumah's days, in Nkrumah's days would have cost 50 billion pounds. So he could have done that. But instead, he did a 19-kilometer motorway. He did his part. Like I said, what he did, he did. What he didn't do, he didn't do. What he did well, he did well. What he didn't do well, he didn't do well. We should not give the impression that he did so well because Nana Akufo-Addo is so bad. Everybody is better than Nana Akufo-Addo. Or he did so well because your mama was bad. Apart from Akufo-Addo, everybody is better than mama. But when you look at it comparatively and you put the points there, political, economics, foreign policy, education, and whatever, and you try to mark, you'll be able to see clearly how far it went and how far it could have gone with the money at its disposal and the population you have to cater for. Looking after 5 children, so it's not, if I look at five children, so it's not looking after 31 children. That's my problem. So he did his thing, he did his part, but we are talking about the legacy. How his governance has affected our constitution, our political culture, the impunity. I can do this. I don't need any accountability. Nobody can tell me what to do. I can do that. Those are the issues that have dragged us to where we are today, and we got to move away from that.
Okay, Dr. Nii, we're 1 hour 17 minutes, and there are no further questions. Yeah. I'm not quite sure if people weren't quite sure what to ask or whatever, but thank you, Kenneth, for your questions.
Thanks very much. I know where you're coming from. I know where you're coming from, and it's a common thing. But as we delve deeper and deeper into what happened and what should have happened and what could have happened, I think we'll give space for new thinking,
more conversation about it. Yeah.
Okay,
well, thank you for those of you who are watching online. Thank you, Kenneth, for your questions. As always, we'll return next week, same time, same place, with a new topic. Let your friends know, share, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.